Hello! I am back in my studio for the first time, really the first time in a couple of weeks. It's been a little bit of time, right? Because I had visitors. My brother and my nephew came to visit me from Colorado for a week, roughly a week, and so that really kind of cut into my production time because I was keeping my 9-year-old nephew entertained. I'm sorry, I'm moving my iPad around a little bit. I'll stop doing that. He had traveled halfway across the country because he was bored sitting at his home in Colorado after homeschooling for the end of the 2020 school year, I guess it was. And so when he came to visit, we couldn't just sit around the house. So the poor kid would have been bored out of his skull if I'd spent 5 hours in my studio. So we did do a little bit of art making together. But like I said, I took some time off. And then last week I had a 2-day mastermind event I was attending that was online, virtual, and so of course that cut into my studio time as well. And then I had other things I had to get done in the time I had available. So I'm finally back in the studio, and I'm finally back here live on Facebook to give you that window into my studio so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to shift my iPad over to a location so you can watch me sew and watch me work, and then I'll keep talking a little bit about what's going on. So let me get you shifted. Don't get dizzy. My arm right in the way, don't I? Really not good. Let's see, is that showing what I want to show? Let's turn you just a little bit more. I think right like that. There we go. So, yay! I am still working on Connected, which is the latest textured fiber painting in my Feelings series. This piece is going to end up being about 2 foot by 3 foot when I'm done with it. Its companion piece, isolated, is on the design wall behind me. I haven't set it aside yet. It's still hanging there as sort of inspiration. But like I said, I'm just going to start sewing again and whatnot, and talk a little bit more about what I was up to over the last couple of weeks when I wasn't here in the studio. And then I want to get a little bit real with what's been going on with me, because I feel like on social media we tend to only share the best parts of ourselves, or the highlights, or the super happy moments, and we're multifaceted beings, and I think sometimes we got to share those facets too, because it helps people to understand who we are as real human beings. So, and that's just what I'm feeling called to do today. So that's what I'm going to do. So like I said, I'm going to get stitching again here, get myself situated on my seat. I always end up sitting down crooked. I don't know why. Anyway, but yeah, so over the last couple of weeks, like I just said, my brother and my nephew came to visit. They came across country from Colorado with a family friend of theirs, whose father, and that gentleman's father, had passed away from the virus, and so they were coming to kind of help the mom deal with the house and deal with all this stuff. So anyway, but my brother and my nephew stayed with me. So I kept the 9-year-old entertained, which was fun, because not having children of my own is always sort of something a little challenging for me to figure out how you entertain kids, because I don't really know what to do. But we did a drawing one day together. He only wanted to do one drawing in the days we were together. Instead, we went to the swimming pool in my community, which is open. Fortunately, there weren't a heck of a lot of people there. We were there for a couple hours, and I think at the busiest time there might have been 12 people in the pool. But it's a really big pool, and everybody was spread out, so that was awesome. And I got a little bit of color, so I'm super excited about that, because you move to Florida and you're pale and it looks weird. So I'm looking a little bit more like, at least I don't glow in the dark. We did that, and then one day he was funny, because he grew up, my nephew grew up in California and had been to the Pacific Ocean, certainly the beaches there in Southern California, once or twice with family. And he's not a huge beach kid, for whatever reason. I think he gets that from my brother, who doesn't like the beach. So we showed him the ocean when he first got here, and he's like, okay, great, I've seen the ocean. This is a 9.5-year-old again. Wasn't terribly thrilled. But then when we were talking about, wouldn't it be cool to dip your toe into the Atlantic to know that you've been in 2 oceans, then he got kind of excited about it. So we spent one day driving around, and we went looking for some souvenirs, which don't go into Walmart. I'm just gonna say, don't go into a Walmart anywhere on the planet. They're packed. It freaked me out. I went into one and said, never again. Even with my mask, I was freaking out. But anyway, we did a little bit of errand running, and then we went to the beach and spent about an hour and a half there. And he really enjoyed playing in the ocean, so that was lots of fun. But then it was time for them to get ready for their road trip to go back to Colorado, and so I took care of them. And so then, of course, I had things I had to do around the house that didn't allow me to get into my studio. So today is really the first day that I've been able to spend some good time in here. I spent a little bit of time over the weekends, but even then there were other things going on. So today I'm back in. And then last week, which could have been a really good week for art making, I was in a two-day, full-day virtual mastermind for my business building program that I'm enrolled in, and to build this art business. And so that, of course, took up 2 full days, which again, typically are used to make art. And then on the day that I was done, I still had things I had to catch up on. So that's just the reality of life. I find that sometimes I can get myself a little worked up about not getting the production in that I want. I kind of beat myself up about that, and then I just sort of, in this morning's meditation, the download I got was to be reminded that goals and targets are just that. They're things to aim for. They're not necessarily things that are required. And so I'm giving myself a little bit of grace to accept the fact that the last 2 weeks were needed to do what was done, and not necessarily for making art. But I am really happy to be in here today and working on this piece. I had hoped when I was at my last window into my studio live event a couple weeks ago, I had hoped to be done with this piece by the end of June. But since today is June 30th, the day I'm recording this, and I'm nowhere near done, that's not going to happen. So this will probably take me maybe a full 6 weeks to complete. I started it June 1st. If I'm done by mid-July, I'll feel pretty satisfied with that. 6 weeks is a reasonable amount of time. It takes me roughly about, I've always sort of tracked the hours in my studio, but I never really tracked them and then like on a spreadsheet. I kept it on a calendar, so it was harder to do the math. So now that I've got it on a spreadsheet, I'm realizing it takes me probably about 40 to 45 hours to make one of these pieces. And most of that is this stitching time that just takes longer than, because when you stitch anywhere from 1/8 to 1/4 inch lines all over it, very densely stitched, time is time. It takes what it takes. So that's the case. So that's what I've been up to for the last couple weeks. I've kind of missed popping on here and chattering away at my iPad while I stitch. So I'm really happy to be back here in the studio making my art, because again, this is my business. This is what I'm doing for a living. I am making fiber art, and I'm teaching myself how to paint. I'll shift my chair a little bit. You can sort of see my painting over there. That one's not for sale. You can see how I set it up. It's like it's a mess. Anyway, but I'll keep it because it's fun. Teaching myself how to paint, working on my novel. I published my book of poetry, which again is called It All Started with a Haiku, and is available on Amazon for Kindle and in paperback if you're interested. Sorry, something's weird with my machine. So I'm doing a sort of thing, but like I said, my whole business is to create art and then market it and sell it. So that's why I'm in a mastermind to kind of learn how to grow a business. Because I don't know how to do that. That's not what my corporate career was about. I wasn't in sales and marketing, so it's a skill I'm acquiring here in my 50s. I just had a birthday. I just turned 53. I like birthdays. I think birthdays are fun. I figure they're always worth celebrating as long as you're on this side of the grass. A birthday is worth celebrating. So, all right, something's going on here. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about this business of making art and who I am as an artist today. Because, like I said, I was beating myself up a little bit because I wasn't getting into the studio making art over the last couple of weeks, because I had visitors, because I was involved in a business event, and it was really kind of making me kind of depressed and sad. And disclosure, I don't want to say suffer, but I do have depression. It's never been a full diagnosis, but I have experienced it my entire life. My mother has always called me moody, and in reality what this means is that I am just basically, I do have some depression. I typically am rather melancholy. I can be very happy, but sometimes they can be almost extreme, not quite bipolar. It's certainly not manic, but I do have some depression. And so when I get to a point where I feel like I'm beating myself up, my depression will settle in. And then it becomes even harder to pull myself out, and then I beat myself up even more. So it's a really vicious cycle, right? And one of the things that I have found through the years that helps me to pull out of it is to create art. When I'm creating, it's really hard for me to be depressed. It's hard for me to stay in that space. And so I'm going to get kind of emotional about this. And so as a result, I'm very grateful for my art practice and for this business that I am building as a full-time artist, making and selling fiber art and eventually paintings, and books, and whatever else I come up with. So I may do some prints of my art and everything else. I'm digressing, but anyway. But I want to talk about that a little bit. We get on social media and we show all the happy notes, and we show, oh, here's this this pretty art I'm making, or this book I published, or this great dinner I went to, or I had this awesome birthday, or whatever it is, right? And we don't share the hard times as much. I'm not saying people don't, because they do, but we share less of that. And I don't know that I'm going to keep doing that so much. I think I'm going to continue to try to be as honest and real as I can about who I am and what I'm feeling. Today I am still feeling somewhat depressed, but as I stitch and as I talk, I feel better, and that's good. And it helps to quiet the negative thinking that goes through my head. That's one of the best things about making my art, or one of the things that my art does for me. It's like one of the biggest benefits for me. It's not just the act of creating something pretty and beautiful, or something that could grace somebody's home with joy and light, but it also brings joy and light into my psyche and lifts that sort of gray space. And because I'm not a huge fan of gray, I like really big, bold, bright colors. And when I'm feeling down and depressed and super melancholy, everything feels gray, and so then it doesn't feel aligned. So even though it's a reality for me, it still doesn't feel aligned. So that's it's this paradox that's part of who I am. And I just think as I continue forward, I'm going to share the paradox because it's part of it. So it struck me today as I was kind of preparing for this window in my studio session that that the topic I wanted to discuss could, maybe I really ought to title this "The Tortured Artist." There is this, sort of stereotype of the tortured artist who suffers from extreme emotions and whatnot, and I think maybe there's some reality to that. At least for me, there is. But that said, I don't necessarily think I'm truly tortured. I just think that I have some emotional traits that need some managing. So I don't medicate. My depression is not that extreme. But I do, like I said, I medicate it with things like making my art. So what I'm curious about, I suppose, is what do you do when you feel the darker side of yourself? What do you do to help pull yourself out of it? What do you do to, what can you do to sort of share those darker moments to help lift you from them? Because one of the things, not only is the art thing, but it's just talking to people. And I know right now I'm just talking to my iPad and nobody's talking back to me, and that's okay. It's just the act of talking. I spend the vast majority of my day sitting in my house by myself, right? With no one to talk to. Occasionally I have, again, I've got the mastermind group and we do Zooms and whatnot. But I spend a lot of hours in quiet. And, and for the most part, that's okay. certainly spending more hours in the quiet ever since this virus hit, where I can't, you can't get out and network, you can't get out and meet new people in a brand new home. That's a little depressing. But, so for me, talking, making art, reading books, playing with color, just sort of doing that creative thing, those are the things that lift me out of my gray place. And I'm curious what others do to lift themselves out of their gray place. Because I know, actually, that we all have dark spaces, right? Everything's got a duality to it. The world isn't necessarily binary, right? There's so much, everything is multifaceted, and so you can't get stuck on, but we as linear creatures tend to get stuck on the good and the bad definitions, the positive, the negative, the true or the false. And while there's merit to that, we forget, I think, that we are multifaceted beings. And so when we only share one facet, aren't we doing ourselves a disservice? Aren't we doing our friends and family a disservice by only sharing what we feel is suitable for public consumption? I follow several people, I followed them for years, and they are very authentic and open as well. And her name is Jenny Lawson. She is known as the Blogess, and she is very, very open about her depression and assorted other anxiety type issues and health problems, and the meds she's on and the things she has, and like her extreme introversion and everything else. And I follow Glennon Doyle, who has had substance abuse and has been sober for years now, but suffers from, basically has depression and anxiety, and she used substances to self-medicate those issues for herself. And I won't say I haven't used booze to self-medicate. I used to do that a lot more than I do. I don't do it now. I won't say I don't drink. I do still drink, but I drink it's minimal. I'm not still trying to party like I was in college, which is what I did for many, many years. After I got out of college, which really not really the best thing I could have done, but it's all part of the growth path, right? And I had to go through those years of really continuing to almost abuse myself so that I could come out the other side and understand who I am and know what it is that really does keep me on a more even keel. And again, it's creating, it's making art, it's writing books, it's writing poetry, it's learning how to paint, oddly enough, it's playing with spreadsheets and kind of creating graphics on the computer and stuff like that. There's some weird things. Things that give me this sense of creating order. I don't know why, but they lift me out of my gray spots. And so, but again, my favorite thing here is to create art. So that's probably what I got for you today. I'm going to keep stitching for a while. I have a meeting in, I don't know, half an hour or something like that. We're all going to talk to some people live and in person via Zoom. So that'll be fun. And that'll lift me up too. So until next time, let's do this for 20 minutes. Until our next session, which will be Thursday, around the same time. I'm going to try and do these on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's all I got for you today. And so I'm going to leave you with a couple thoughts. One, consider sharing all the facets of yourself. I'm going to get my iPad. When you're sharing on social media, consider sharing the multifaceted portion of yourself and who you are. Don't just share just the positive bits. Share all of who you are. Because I'm committing right now to trying to do more of that with you. So, because it informs my art and it informs my conversations, and it's just easier to be authentic. My God, it's just simpler. Otherwise, it kind of feels like you're lying to people all the time, and that's just old. And I just think we do too much of that on social media, and so I don't want to do that anymore. I want to be truthful and open and authentic. If that means sharing who I am as a portrait artist, then I guess I'm going to share my portrait artist stuff. So that's one thing. So consider please sharing all the facets of who you are, because I'd love to see them. And then secondly, and more practically, if you know of anybody who is looking for a piece of art for their home, and likes to be surprised a little bit by their art, considers themselves a little bit rebellious in terms of the art that they like, have them come look at my stuff. Go to hilaryclark.com, 1L in Hilary, and have them check out my gallery, because my pieces, particularly my Abstract Feelings series, is just what I hear from people is that they look at it from across a room and they think it's a painting maybe on a piece of wood or something because of the abstract shape that they are. You know, it's not square, so they know it's not on a canvas per se, but they think it's on something and they think it's kind of a painting, and then they get all the way across the room and discover that it's fabric and thread and it's a layered piece. And so if you know somebody who really loves big, bright, bold, abstract art, point them to my page. Go check it out yourself. See if there's anything there you like. In addition to my Feelings series, I have a hot cross collection. I made about 8 crosses in that series. And then I have some other pieces that are also available for sale. So that's the practical bit of today's conversation and today's window into my studio. But I thank you for joining me, and I will see you again on Thursday.